Housewives are like parasites, aren't they? Terry looks down on me, a full-time homemaker, at a family gathering. The relatives around us are giving Terry puzzled looks. But, oblivious to the atmosphere, Mary loudly laughs and retorts. Oh wow, that sounds almost like being jobless or without any direction. Indeed, I don't have a job. But that's only because Terry wanted it that way. I grit my teeth in frustration. Enjoying my discomfort, Terry says with a sneer, "Why don't you just quit being a full-time homemaker and get a job? Though I doubt someone incompetent like you could manage." Hey, Dad. It's mean to say the truth like that. Mary laughs heartily, finding his words hilariously absurd. I've had enough of this husband and daughter. Then I quit being a mother today. What? After this, the two of them will face a desperate situation. My name is Millie Smith. I'm a 45-year-old full-time homemaker. I currently live with my husband, Terry, and his daughter, Mary. I met Terry at a dinner party hosted by an acquaintance. At that time, I was a nurse with no romantic prospects. Nursing is mostly women, and while there are more men in medicine, the competition is fierce. Usually, the beautiful senior nurses were the ones dating doctors. Someone with average looks like me didn't stand a chance. Plus, dating within the hospital seemed awkward if things didn't work out. So, I decided to seek relationships outside. Through an acquaintance, I was introduced to men. But it never went well. My job involved night shifts and working weekends. Maybe that's why I couldn't match schedules with most men. Because of that, my dating experiences always ended after just 1 or 2 dates. But Terry was different. Terry and I had many dates together. A big reason for this was his job. He worked in sales at a multinational cosmetics company. His work mostly involved dealings with department stores, and he worked regardless of weekends. As a result, Terry often had weekdays off, making it easier to match our schedules. Dating Terry was fun. Our dates were short, often just meals or karaoke, but they were always filled with laughter. I thought I'd be so happy if I could marry Terry. Then one day, out of the blue, he proposed to me. I was so happy I cried. Terry was concerned to see me crying, but when I said yes, he was overjoyed. After meeting my parents, all that was left was to make it official. That's when Terry told me he was divorced with a 10-year-old daughter, Mary. His ex-wife had suddenly left him. And it seems that led to a divorce eventually. He asked me to quit nursing and to be a full-time homemaker. As Mary was still in elementary school and needed care at home. I'm really sorry, but I love you, Millie, and I want to be with you, he said with a look of regret. Few women would agree to marry upon learning about a stepchild so late. That's probably why Terry waited so long to tell me. But I loved Terry, so I agreed with a smile. I really loved my job as a nurse and thought it was my calling, but there was no helping it. A new life with the man I loved. I was looking forward to our married life together. For 10 years, I supported Terry and Mary as a full-time homemaker. To outsiders, our family might seem ideal. A family of 3 living in a house with a yard. As the wife, I'm a full-time homemaker. Terry works at a multinational corporation, and we seem to have a comfortable life financially. But reality was different. After we got married, Terry stopped seeing me as a woman. I felt more like a housekeeper to him. One morning, just after we'd married, Terry sat at the dining table, silent and seemingly sleepy. "Good morning. Breakfast's ready," I said, setting the meal on the table. It was when I was placing scrambled eggs, salad, and bacon on a plate with toast. Suddenly, Terry said, "Hold on," stopping me in my tracks. "What's wrong?" I asked, surprised by his sudden interjection. He looked at me with a twisted face, accusingly. "Why are you serving bacon for breakfast? What if Mary gains weight because of that?" I was taken aback by his remark. If it were a little kid, I'd think that concern is necessary. But Mary is already in the 4th grade. She can surely eat bacon no problem. So, I countered. Eating bacon occasionally isn't a big deal. It's not like we're vegans. But Terry wasn't convinced. Instead, he looked at me with disgust. You're just being careless because Mary isn't your biological child, aren't you? Don't slack off, even if you are just a housewife. He was raising his voice when Mary walked in, rubbing her sleepy eyes. Good morning. As soon as Terry saw her, his face lit up with a smile. Good morning, Mary. You look cute today. Where did his earlier rudeness towards me go? I watched his quick change of attitude with a cold eye. The smile he no longer showed me, he now lavished entirely on Mary. Terry gently stroked Mary's face and talked to her. Mary, of course, was smiling all along. Then, after lavishing attention on Mary, Terry glared at me and said in a low voice. Anyway, for Mary's sake, make a chicken dish now. And make sure it's tender, good quality chicken. If you cut corners like this again, I won't forgive you. Terry said that and then threw the bacon I had cooked into the trash can. I was terribly shaken by this sudden event. What are you doing? That's such a waste. I protested, but Terry just glared at me. He even started yelling at me loudly. Don't talk back, just a housewife. You're eating off my money. Your only response should be yes. Mary looked at me with cold eyes. I was scolded continuously until Terry was satisfied. I had no allies here. Yes. I replied, biting back my frustration. Terry's behavior had made Mary increasingly brazen. She took it for granted to order me around. And threw tantrums if I didn't comply. Telling Terry would only make matters worse, so I couldn't speak firmly to Mary. Now, 10 years have passed since we started living together, and Mary is already 20. She's a college student now, but dumps all her personal chores on me. Today, she came back from college saying, I'm home, and just left her coat and socks in the entrance. Not bothering to pick them up. Hey! Can you please put your laundry in the basket? I hurriedly picked up her scattered clothes, pleading desperately. Mary carelessly left her rain-soaked clothes lying around. If I don't pick them up and wash them quickly, they'll start to smell. And the floor will get damp, which is the worst. But Mary just said lazily. Ugh, why don't you just do it? You're a housewife, that's your job, right? It's not like you have anything else to do, you're free anyway. Saying this, she went to change into her house clothes, leaving more clothes strewn about. Mary then casually opened the fridge and started drinking a 1L carton of juice. This is really troublesome, I muttered to myself. Mary has no sense of femininity. Her actions are clumsy, and she leaves the empty carton as is, not even bothering to put it back in the fridge. Even though there's still some left. As I stood there perplexed, Terry came home. I'm home. What's all this fuss about? He looked puzzled. Mary ran to Terry with a smile. And then she uttered a devilish remark. Dad. She's harassing me, she said, pointing at me. What? Terry glared at me. I, exasperated by Mary's attitude, explained. I just asked Mary to at least put her clothes in the laundry basket after she scattered them around. I thought that was a simple enough task, something even a grade schooler could do. I shouldn't be asking for anything too difficult. But the moment I said that, Terry let out a heavy sigh. You should be able to handle that much. You're pointless as a housewife if you can't even manage the household properly, he said, blaming me one-sidedly. To Terry, I seemed incompetent because I couldn't provide 100% support for Mary's lifestyle. That's not fair, I whispered in shock. Why should I have to coddle Mary, a college student, like a toddler? I certainly didn't agree with that. Mary hid behind Terry, smirking triumphantly at me. Just do everything yourself. From now on, be proactive and get things done before I even have to say anything, Terry instructed me. After that, both of them returned to their respective rooms. I'm exhausted. Alone, I felt all my energy drain away. Lately, Mary has been imitating Terry's attitude towards me, always looking down on me. This doesn't help in feeling any affection for her. I always think I should raise her as if she were my own daughter, but with her acting this way, it's tough. It's hard even with a blood connection. Terry, who I thought loved me, doesn't show any affection towards me either. I'm always treated like a housekeeper. Since we got married, he only smiles at Mary. Am I really okay with this? I whispered to myself while picking up the clothes Mary had strewn around. Amidst this, Terry suddenly told me. This Saturday, we have a family gathering at my parents' house. Make sure you prepare everything. I was bewildered by his announcement. Saturday? That's the day after tomorrow. Why are you telling me this now? Today is Thursday. I need to buy gifts for the in-laws and rearrange the plans I had for Saturday. If you had told me at least a week in advance, I said, but Terry just looked down on me with a smirk. You're just a housewife, what important things could you possibly have? Unlike me and Mary, you don't have a job. Just hurry up and get ready. With that, he left for work. You've got to be kidding me. I panicked at his words. On the day of the family gathering. Excuse us. I managed to prepare the gifts and visited Terry's parents' house with him and Mary. Welcome. We've been waiting for you. Terry's mother greeted us with a smile. Terry's father had passed away, and now his mother lived alone in their house. She's a kind woman, always telling me, "Do you need any help? I'm here if you ever need to talk." I would have liked to talk to Terry's mother about Terry and Mary's behavior, but I didn't want to burden her with unnecessary worries. So, I kept it to myself. By the time we arrived, other relatives of Terry's had already gathered. Terry's mother had ordered sushi for everyone, and the family gathering proceeded pleasantly. However, about an hour in, as everyone's drinks flowed, Terry, slightly tipsy, laughed and exclaimed, "My wife, a full-time homemaker, doesn't want to work. She really costs a fortune." He slammed his beer mug on the table. "Terry, what's gotten into you all of a sudden?" Terry's mother asked him, puzzled. The relatives looked at Terry in surprise. "Terry, have you had too much to drink? Here, have some water." I offered him a cup of water, but he knocked it away forcefully. And he declared, "Housewives are like parasites." Terry was looking down on me, a full-time homemaker, at the family gathering with obvious contempt. His eyes clearly held contempt for me. The relatives around us were giving him puzzled looks. But Mary, seemingly oblivious to the atmosphere, laughed loudly and said, "Oh wow, that sounds almost like being jobless or without any direction. Indeed, I don't work." But that's because Terry wanted it that way. And to properly care for Mary when she was in elementary school. He's been disregarding the past 10 years. Frustrated, I gritted my teeth. Terry, amused by my reaction, mockingly said, "Why don't you just quit being a full-time homemaker and get a job? Though, I doubt someone incompetent like you could manage." This, coming from the man who told me to quit my job. It's unbelievable. I wanted to continue my nursing career. After making me quit my job, it's been 10 years and now he flips the script like this. And on top of that, he calls me incompetent. It's just too malicious. Apparently realizing Terry's remark was out of line, his mother said, "Terry, enough is enough. How can you say Millie is incompetent?" She scolded him, and the relatives looked at Terry disapprovingly. But Terry seemed unfazed, laughing off, "Why is Mom angry? I'm just being strict with her because she gets carried away if I'm too kind. Mary is no different." "Oh, come on, Dad. It's mean to tell the truth like that. I do think she's incompetent, though." Mary burst into laughter, finding Terry's remark absurd. Terry's mother looked puzzled and upset at both Terry and Mary's behavior. "That's terrible," she muttered quietly, and looked at me with concern. I softly told her, "Terry and Mary are always like this. Please don't worry about it." Then, my mother-in-law, turning pale, came over to apologize. I had intended to smooth things over, but it seems I only added fuel to the fire. She glared at Terry and Mary. But the two of them didn't seem to realize it at all. Terry and Mary showed no signs of remorse and continued to laugh uproariously. I've had enough of this husband and daughter. I gave Terry and Mary an ultimatum. Then I quit being a mother today. What? The two looked at me, dumbfounded. This would lead them into a desperate situation. Mary, recovering first, burst out laughing. Hilarious. If you stop being a mom, what will be left for you? She laughed heartily. Terry, joining in Mary's mockery, looked down on me with a scornful laugh. What are you gonna do quitting being a mom now? Terry and Mary kept repeating terrible things to me. Their attitudes were unpleasant to watch. Terry's mother had been frowning and looking displeased since earlier. Her gaze towards her son and granddaughter was not one of affection. She probably despised their unreasonable behavior. The other relatives were also whispering and looking at Terry and Mary with discomfort. Nobody was laughing along with them. Oblivious to this, Terry and Mary continued to make condescending remarks about me. You've been unemployed for 10 years. Society doesn't need you anymore. That's the price for playing around at home all this time. Terry sneered at me. Unlike me, who's young and has a future, you're just an old woman now. So sorry for you. Mary laughed mockingly. I felt humiliated. Silently, I clenched my fist. I've endured more than 10 years. I hoped to become a real family because I loved Terry and believed Mary and I could eventually bond as mother and daughter. I had believed so. But the reality was entirely different. Since we got married, Terry's attitude changed completely. He always treated me like a housekeeper, never even calling me by my name. Mary was the same. She was always commanding me, thinking of me as a convenient person to take care of her needs, never seeing me as a mother. I tried to treat Mary as my own child, pouring my love into her care. I never missed a school event and woke up early to make her favorite dishes for field trip lunches. Despite all this, Mary never thanked me once. Her usual response was, "You're just a housewife, isn't that normal? You should try harder, actually." Terry has never thanked me for anything either. Who do you think you owe for being able to eat? You should be kneeling and thanking me. Terry always said that. In his eyes, those who work and earn money are superior, and it's just natural for me to do all the housework. He would often say, "You have it easy, staying at home all day." That's not a joke. From morning to night, I have so much to do: cleaning, laundry, cooking. Even when Terry and Mary were leisurely watching TV, I was always busy with household chores. To them, all my efforts were taken for granted. I was just a convenient existence for them. I don't want to live with these two anymore. It's time to move on. Amidst this bizarre atmosphere, I suddenly stood up. Terry and Mary were surprised to see me get up. What's this all of a sudden? You are startling me, Terry protested in a high-pitched voice. With a blank expression, I made my declaration right there. Then I'm quitting being a mother, so from now on, I'm a stranger to Terry and Mary. Goodbye. I swiftly picked up my bag and headed out of my in-laws' house. The in-laws and relatives seemed confused, but no one tried to stop me. Terry started to panic. Wait! Are you going home? Yes, that's right. It's rude to leave a dinner party early, isn't it? And yet you're trying to go home first. Mary looked at me in disbelief. What are these two even talking about? Huh? There's no way I'm going back to the house where I lived with you. I'm going to my parents' house, I replied, half in disbelief. I no longer want to live with these two. Terry then shouted in disbelief. What are you thinking? Going to your parents' house all of a sudden? What about the housework? Aren't you a full-time homemaker? Mary glared at me. Exactly. That's so unreasonable. What about my meals and taking care of me? You have to do it properly, or I'll be in trouble. Mary demanded, as if attacking me. Even now, they're only thinking of themselves. It's just unbelievable. I sighed lightly and replied, "Why don't you take care of it yourselves? Anyway, I'm parasites, I'm leaving, bye-bye." I waved my hand and left the place. Terry and Mary were shouting something behind me, but I ignored them. I won't be manipulated by them anymore. Let them regret it for the rest of their lives. Then, I quickly went back to the house we lived in and gathered only my valuables. I had said I wouldn't return, but I still had my clothes there. I only went back to pick up the essentials. I had to hurry before Terry and Mary returned. My belongings were few, just some clothes, so I quickly packed them into a duffel bag. Terry hardly ever spent money on me, so my personal items were limited. I left the house key in the mailbox. I won't be needing it anymore. Meanwhile, I kept receiving calls and numerous messages from Terry like, "You'll regret it when you come back," and "Come back to my parents' house right now." As if I would return to my in-laws' place. I had no intention of going back home either. After all, there was nothing to lose from divorcing Terry. I went straight to my parents' house. I had informed them beforehand, so my mother warmly welcomed me. My father also looked concerned. My real family is just these two people. I almost cried at my parents' kindness. So, I started my life at my parents' home. Life there was more comfortable than I thought. There were no Terry and Mary to command me around. No one criticized my cooking, and I didn't have to pick up after their messes. I could use my free time for job hunting and focusing on myself. I applied to several promising job openings. Being single now, I could even do night shifts. Shortly after, I received an interview invitation. I had been continuously ignoring calls and messages from Terry and Mary. By now, their house must be in chaos. And that's probably why they're contacting me. I won't help them now, not after everything. I firmly decided this and continued to ignore the incoming calls that kept coming. After 3 weeks, with my background as a nurse, I managed to secure a new job. It's a full-time position as a regular employee. There's some anxiety about coping with a 10-year gap. But I have no choice but to push through. I bolstered myself for the challenge. The night before my first day at the new job, my mother came to my room with a confused look. "What's wrong?" I asked. She hesitantly said, "Terry and Mary have come over. I can't just send them away, what should I do?" She was clearly troubled. I hadn't divorced Terry yet, so she was unsure how to deal with my legal husband. My father, concerned for me, offered, should I go and give them a piece of my mind? I didn't want to burden my parents any further. So I reluctantly answered, "I'll go." It was time to sever ties with Terry and Mary. I headed to the front door. Opening it, I found Terry and Mary outside the gate. "What do you want now?" I asked coldly. I had no intention of letting them into my parents' house. Even when Terry said, "Let us in, it's cold out here," I didn't open the gate. Instead, I added, "If you have something to say, say it here. Make it quick, please." Terry seemed a bit surprised by my non-compliant attitude. Then, he sighed heavily. "How long do you plan to take it easy at your parents' house? We're in a mess back home." Terry started with insults as soon as he opened his mouth. He was clearly angry. He must think it's all my fault, not reflecting on his behavior. Mary also glared at me. "Yeah. It's all your fault. The house is a mess, and we have no clean clothes to wear. Hurry up and come back to take care of it." They told me it had been 3 weeks since I left. Terry and Mary apparently haven't been taking care of the house at all. Mary just leaves her clothes scattered everywhere. And hasn't even used the washing machine. Terry doesn't reprimand her. Instead, he seems to be contributing to the mess. As a result, the living room is filled with dirty clothes. Unbelievable. 2 adults and they let the house get into such a state. I muttered in disbelief. However, Terry reacted to my murmurs. Laundry is your job, so I'm leaving it for you. Be grateful and wash it, will you? Exactly. Hurry up and do it. That's all you're good for, isn't it? Mary added, laughing. I was appalled and speechless. How long do these two think they can order me around? But if I keep quiet, it's playing right into their hands. I won't allow that. I calmly countered. Why would I do that? I'm divorcing Terry. A lawyer will contact you soon, so please make sure you handle the procedures properly. I spoke calmly. I determined not to be swayed by Terry and Mary anymore. But Terry seemed unsatisfied. How can you divorce without any income? Someone incompetent like you will be in trouble very soon, he said, laughing loudly. Mary, still seemingly confident, told me. Being a real jobless person is bad, you know? Apologize to Dad quickly and come back home. We'll put you to work again. I didn't want to be at their mercy anymore. Besides, I have a job now. I smiled and rejected them. I've already secured a new job, so don't worry about me. Maybe you should worry about living in a garbage house? What? You already got a job? That's too quick. Terry sounded frustrated. Mary felt the same. I thought you'd be crying by now without a job. But look at you, acting all high and mighty. Mary clicked her tongue in frustration. Expecting my misery, they really are the worst kind of father and child. As I was thinking this, Mary, as if she had an idea, said, You're my mother, right? So you can't just quit being a mother so easily. I'm still a student. She made a face as if she were the victim. But it's too late for that. Besides, Mary must know the truth. I smiled at Mary and spoke. You know, don't you, Mary? That we're not related by blood. Once I divorce Terry, we'll no longer be family. Ah! Mary turned pale. As if she just realized it. Her mind seems quite naive. I'm not Mary's real mother. Her biological mother is someone else. That's why, after the divorce from Terry, Mary and I will be strangers. If Mary had shown me some affection, maybe I would have felt some motherly love for her. But to Mary, I was just a convenient housekeeper until the end. She always commanded me around, acting as if it was only natural for me to serve her. I don't want to be a mother in such a situation. Mary looked frustrated, but she couldn't think of any way out. She glared at me in silence. Terry seemed to realize my determination. And now that I had found a new job, there was no way to avoid the divorce. He looked at me resentfully. With nothing left to say, I bid them my final farewell. Goodbye. We'll never meet again. Terry and Mary's faces contorted. They had planned to bring me back to do the housework, but their plan had failed. And with the divorce, they would have to accept that I would never do the housework for them again. They would have to return to their unkempt house alone. They must be filled with a sense of despair. Ignoring them, I closed the front door of my parents' house. Eventually, Terry and I got divorced. He was quite resistant at first, only saying, "We won't divorce. Everything will be back to normal once Millie returns home. Going back to being a housekeeper is out of the question." Through my lawyer, I conveyed that reconstruction was impossible and that if Terry continued to refuse the divorce, it would lead to a legal battle. Terry would surely be troubled by the idea of going to court. Eventually, he signed the divorce papers. As for what happened afterward, Terry quit his job. It turns out he is completely incapable of handling household chores. Not even doing laundry. He ended up wearing dirty clothes repeatedly. Naturally, this caused a stench at his workplace, and he was repeatedly warned by his superiors. Terry, having an oddly high pride, strongly resisted these warnings. And eventually resigned. However, even after quitting, he couldn't find a new job. Going to interviews without being able to take care of himself and smelling bad certainly didn't help. Mary could have done the laundry, even if Terry found it difficult. Both had become accustomed to doing nothing. There are coin laundries and housekeepers available, but they chose not to utilize these services. It's their responsibility. There's still a mortgage on the house and Mary's college fees to consider. If things continue like this, they're headed for a downfall. Once, Mary called me. I was reluctant to answer, but I did anyway. Yes? Mary immediately started talking. Finally, you answered. The house is a mess, full of dirty, smelly clothes. Plus, Dad has no income since he quit his job. I was disgusted that she was still trying to rely on someone else in this situation. I'm a stranger to you now. Maybe ask your grandmother? I suggested, sighing. But Mary, almost in tears, said, Grandma has been distant since you left, and other relatives don't answer our calls. Please, help us. My mother-in-law is a sensible person and was a homemaker herself. Moreover, many among our relatives are also homemakers. It's no surprise they distanced themselves from people who belittled homemakers. It's only natural to distance oneself from people who belittle homemakers. Don't call me again. Goodbye, I said and hung up the phone. I immediately blocked Mary's number. From now on, Terry and Mary will likely face increasing hardship. Without income, they won't be able to afford Mary's college fees. She'll probably have to drop out soon. But that's their fault for not doing any household work. Unaware of this, Terry and Mary will likely continue to struggle for the rest of their lives. It's been 3 years since then. My life has changed significantly. I've remarried. 6 months ago, I married a colleague from the same hospital. I never thought workplace romance was possible, but he was very proactive in his approach. And eventually, I gave in. He works as a nurse in a different ward. He is a dedicated and serious person. He had been single all his life and can do all the household chores. He even cooks better than I do, which is surprising. He always treats me as an individual. Asking things like, Millie, how about fish for dinner tonight, while checking the fridge. Terry never did anything and always complained about the food I cooked. He only saw me as a housekeeper. So, my husband's kindness means a lot to me. Nursing is tough, but we support each other and manage somehow. There might be many challenges ahead. But I believe we can overcome them together. Keep going. I'm determined.